There's nothing controversial about wanting to drink clean water, having access to parks and trails, and providing habitat for game and fish. In fact, all of these receive state funding under the Legacy Act, a constitutional amendment that voters approved back in 2008. But what is controversial is this session's Omnibus Legacy Bill, which appropriates money for the Legacy Act. It was scheduled for a floor debate in the House last month, but was not taken up. I had the opportunity to talk to the current chair of the Legacy Committee, Representative Phyllis Kahn, and the past chair, Representative Dean Urdahl. I asked them why the bill is causing controversy. At the heart of the legacy controversy is the question of whose voice matters more, the councils that recommend how legacy money should be spent, or the legislatures.
I think the people who voted for this did not vote to have the Constitution disobeyed, did not vote to have the legislature give up its prerogative to do final appropriations.
The Legacy Act consists of 4 funds: the Clean Water Fund, the Outdoor Heritage Fund, the Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, and the Parks and Trails Fund. Each fund receives revenue from a state sales tax. Advisory committees make recommendations on how the revenue should be spent for their particular fund.
We have 3 citizen advisory groups: Lessard Sams with Outdoor Heritage, the Clean Water Council with the water portion of the bill, and then we have a new Parks and Trails advisory task force that made some suggestions for how we divide up our Parks and Trails money. And there is the belief that the wishes of these advisory councils and committees are not being followed to the extent that they should. I think that we can make changes, we should make changes. There are some who feel that the recommendations in the current bill have gone beyond what should be done.
One of the most controversial differences between the Omnibus Legacy Bill and the recommendations of the Lessard Sams Outdoor Heritage Council is habitat funding for metro parks.
There was a recommendation made by a task force that we created last biennium on how to divide up the parks money between the DNR, the metro parks, and Greater Minnesota. And the recommendation came out 40% of the Parks and Trails funding to DNR, 40% for metro parks, and 20% for Greater Minnesota. Now, in the discussions, that's being changed. And part of the DNR money under this proposal would go to the metro parks, about 3%, so it'd be 43, 37, 20. And that's not the recommendations of the task force. It's not the way Lessard Sams wanted to see things going this time.
Representative Kahn says the metro parks can make a strong case for the additional funding.
The metropolitan area pays a much higher, has higher part of the population and pays a higher percent of the tax that's funding this. And, you know, when we're asking for something that's less than 10% of the funding of this area, it doesn't seem unjust to me.
Speaker of the House, Paul Thiessen, says the discussion over metro parks is one worth having.
It seems to me if the long-term goal is to create a habitat that's going to allow for traditions of hunting and fishing and birding and other outdoor activities, having places in the metro area where that habitat exists and is preserved, because most of the people live here, if we want young people to kind of get into those activities, we need to have those resources available and accessible.
Speaker Thiessen says no legislature has ever completely adhered to Lessard Sams' recommendations. Still, Representative Urdahl says when he was chair, council recommendations were adhered to more closely.
We did have some discrepancies. There was a project in the Brainerd area on the Mississippi River, and we made some changes there. We didn't fund it just as much as they wanted it to be funded because of appraisals that we didn't think were right or hadn't been completed yet. And so we did make some revisions. But again, we generally adhered to the recommendations that were being made.
Both sides agree there are some great things in the bill, money for clean water, funding for invasive species decontamination stations, and money for the State Historical Society.
There being 100 eyes.
The Legacy Finance Bill is scheduled for a House floor debate on Friday. We'll have live television coverage and internet streaming of the debate.